guys, Zane from the Infinite Jukebox here with another quick album review, and today I wanted to talk about the new Slowdive record, Everything Is Alive. Look, let me get one thing out of the way. Slowdive are shoegaze legends through, and nothing can take that away from them. I mean, even despite countless copycat shoegaze bands popping up in their wake, making vain, self-indulgent attempts to sound half as good as a record like Souvlaki, the 90s material that Slowdive put out during their original run, it still holds up today, miraculously. And you know what? Their 2017 self-titled comeback album wasn't half bad either. It was pretty decent, and the only thing that prevented it from being genuinely great was a sort of creative stubbornness that caused them to just have a continuation of a sound that was admittedly executed better by the same people back in the 1990s. Everything Is Alive, on the other hand, almost feels like a sort of intentional self-deterioration of Slowdive's iconic sound. And while I can appreciate how this is arguably their most ambient-based record to date, as well as how this is their most soundscape and texture-based record to date, it just doesn't really work out. If anything, this major focus on atmosphere above things like melody ultimately results in this album specifically sounding kind of like what people who dismiss Slowdive describe Slowdive sounding like, tedious and one note. And that's coming from me, someone who genuinely enjoyed the comeback album to a fair extent, and especially loves their first run material. But this album, if it ran for maybe 30 minutes longer than it actually does, would have been eligible for the title of self-parody. It sounds like everything that shoegaze shouldn't really sound like. Very, very boring. I mean, the vocals of people like Rachel Goswell and Neil Halstead are drowned out without really adding any interesting textures to songs like The Slab, and there aren't any particularly striking melodies to sort of counteract this and make it make sense. In fact, there's a pretty strong argument to make that Everything Alive is the single least melodic Slowdive record to date, and while of course that's not the only quality that's defined them over the decades, it also is a pretty major quality that sort of grounded the noisiness of a lot of their records, allowing them to flourish as a straightforward band rather than just feeling like some sort of experimental soundscape-based project. And while they're not like totally leaning into noise-based music here or anything like that, that lack of song structure and typical melody kind of makes this a more forgettable record than it really should be. That's not to say that the attempt at a lack of melody here is intentional. It's certainly not, but it definitely doesn't work, that's for sure. Some of the sort of electronic flourishes that Slowdive has a bit mingled with in the past are found here again as well, but they just really add nothing. A lot of the instrumentals here are just repetitive. You have songs like Andalusia Plays and the incredibly meandering Prayer Remembered that just add nothing to the record or listening experience, and any sense of nostalgia or other form of bittersweet emotion that's meant to be conjured up via the sounds provided by this record, they just don't work. They feel so flat in comparison to what Slowdive has done in the past, and more importantly, what other more recent shoegaze bands are doing right now as we speak somewhere on Bandcamp, being less recognized than Slowdive ever have been. At this point, as much as I hate to say it, it kind of comes across like Slowdive are just hell-bent on making the same uninteresting, shoegazy, dreamy pop music, and while there's nothing wrong with that, they're not doing anything to keep it even remotely intriguing. It's all more of the same. And while you could argue that the same different set of criticisms could be made to the 2017 self-titled record, I at least think that that album was meant to be a sort of big comeback, hey, remember us kind of record. It was an album meant to really put a spotlight on the classic Slowdive sound for a more modernized audience. I got it then, but now that we're here and it's not the comeback album anymore, it's just the new Slowdive album, this feels ridiculously lacking in uniqueness. And I'm not saying that Slowdive need to like hop into another genre or anything like that, but at the same time, if you put this against some randomly generated AI shoegaze record, chances are I wouldn't be able to tell them apart. I mean, Slowdive just feel like they've lost all identity as a band at this point. There's nothing here that gives me the right tone or vibe that I feel like they're trying to go for. A lot of this record even feels like it's rehashing a lot of older Slowdive sounds, but stripping away some of the better qualities of it, so all that's left is just nothing really. And I have to say that although Slowdive have been a major influence on modern dreamy pop music, it feels like the modern times, the current era of that particular niche, has not only caught up to, but far surpassed the band, as they're just trying to put out again another album that comes across as unenthusiastic, uninteresting, and unwilling to budge in any way from an old, outdated sound that really needs to change somehow in some form. I'm going to give this record 2 stars out of 5. With that being said, that's the end of this quick album review. I've been Zane from the Infinite Jukebox. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.